Hello and welcome back to ITWeb TV live at the Security Summit 2024. I'm joined now by Thaheer Mullins, who is a partner of Savant Venture Fund. Thaheer, welcome.
Good day, Ross. It's lovely to be here.
Pleasure. So I think we've got... this is the first year we've actually had venture capitalists at the ITWeb Security Summit. So we'll get onto that shortly. But I think let's start with who Savant is. It's probably not something that maybe some of our audience are familiar with. But I looked up your organization on your website. And I was kind of fascinated by a lot of the different funds that you're investing in. There's quite diverse, but they're all sort of very cutting edge, very innovative kind of areas. So if you can just give us an overview of your portfolio, who you have invested in, and perhaps if there's some kind of philosophy or ethos that your fund kind of runs by.
Yeah. So you really have... sort of hit it on the head when you said cutting-edge technologies.
Okay, cool.
So we actually started 20 years ago with Nick and Kate. They're the founders of Savant. One was a scientist, one was an engineer, both with MBAs. They really trying to work with early-stage businesses, cutting-edge early-stage businesses. And naturally, with science and engineering being the fortes, that became the theme that we looked at. Over the years, with 4IR coming to the fore, firmware and platforms became a lot more important and relevant, with, more of our solutions being, or that we were targeting, being connected. And as a result, we have sort of included a little bit of software deep tech as well. But not too much. We pretty much do love our science and engineering, the things that you can touch and feel, biotechnologies, etc. So we've had an agnostic approach over the years, and so as a result, we've got aerospace technologies, we've got hydrogen production, we've got agri-tech, both on the biotech and on the automation side.
Wow.
We've got health technologies, so one of our portfolio companies, for example, has the technological solution to actually slow down and arrest the progression of glaucoma, in a way that doesn't have the side effects that the sort of stat quo treatments have. Other areas are energy management, data aggregation, for edge devices, for platform players to utilize, nanofiber manufacture, and all of this is actually coming out of South Africa,
Wow.
And Africa. So it's the ethos or the thesis has been, we find innovative early stage companies that have the ability to demonstrate some level of scale locally, but because of the challenges that we have locally, out of necessity, oftentimes the technology is able to leapfrog the challenges that we have, and in doing so, we create these cutting-edge opportunities that can actually compete globally. And so that's what we're actually starting to see now is African-born technology companies actually, the operational base, the manufacturing or assembly, and all of those things are done here on the continent, but still selling to Europe, selling to America, selling to Australasia as well.
That's great to hear. Great to hear that you kind of, A, that there's that innovation is happening in the continent, but B, that there's someone there that's recognizing it and pushing it.
Yeah.
So tell me a bit, you mentioned early stage startups, but what stages typically do you come in? I know they've got the kind of angel investors through to, once, I guess, things go public or get sold to equity partners. So what does where do you come in? What sort of funding sizes are you kind of involved in?
That's a good question. I'm going to give you a long answer.
Okay.
So, when we started off as an incubator and a venture builder. That's sort of helping really early stage companies, that's pre-revenue, figure out how to turn the innovations into products that can actually go to market and get tested and pivot, not pivot, or cancel. So that's really the job of the incubator. And then in between, we also support companies through an investment readiness acceleration program, and that's really looking at companies that are going into an investment round but are not quite ready, but they are about to go into a round. So we actually spend some time bringing experts in, so they're not just learning from ourselves.
Okay.
And the goal is to actually get them for a state of readiness to where we can either invest, or if we're not able to or we don't want to, there's another set of investors that we bring to the table that are actually able to invest in these companies. The idea of that program is to really catalyze investments into science and engineering opportunities coming from the continent.
Okay.
And then we also do corporate innovation and investment programs. So that's really getting corporates or potential buyers of the solutions or the companies to actually invest in them or finance a little part of their journey so that they can actually accelerate scale, have product market fit, and deliver value for those corporates and potentially other corporates outside of that initial opportunity.
Okay, so that's obviously, the corporates are kind of investing directly into those. But where does Savant get its funding from? Where do you kind of get your money from?
Yeah, sorry.
Same partners?
I actually forgot to add that last part. So we had our first fund, which was backed by IDC, SME Fund, and the Technology Innovation Agency.
Okay.
They were really critical. I think without the SME Fund actually coming on board the first time, it would have been incredibly difficult to actually raise the fund in its entirety. But they did, and following that, we got the IDC over the line and the TIA agency over the line, which really strengthened our relationships with the TIA as well, because we do administer grant on their behalf in the incubator side of things. And so we actually plowed that into companies that were pre-revenue, just post-revenue, and a little bit more mature as well. So already starting to have internationalized revenues, or some of them actually just having plain international revenues, and no longer or not ever having had some localized revenue.
Okay. So as I mentioned at the top of the interview, this is the first year that Security Summit, as far as I'm aware, has had a venture capital kind of panel. And I think venture capital's probably starting to kind of make a footprint in the tech industry locally. So looking at that, what do you think that says about the state of it? Obviously, there could be venture capital in the security industry before the summit kind of picked up on it, but I'm kind of getting a sense that it's not really a big area that's had a lot of focus from the VC community until now. What's your kind of take on that, and what do you think we can do to grow the local kind of security entrepreneurs, startup kind of sector? We've got a couple of examples. This booth, probably right above your head, is sponsored by Snode. We've got Mimecast, who've kind of gone on to global things. We've got Intersect. I think Snode's co-CEO, Christy Meharry, was part of LAWTrust. So we've got a few examples of where we've had security players in the past. But what more can we do to kind of get startups kind of up and running, get them in this cyberspace, and attract kind of interest from yourselves?
So I think what you're doing here is actually a brilliant start. Bringing awareness to the industry, what's happening, who the major players are, what are the problems that they're tackling, and I think there will be a natural progression towards VCs actually spending, focused time trying to target security startups. Because if you look at what's happening at the moment, things have been accelerated due to the lockdown with remote working. There's been a lot more security breaches on various levels in various types of organizations. So, you look at what's happening with a lot of state institutions, credit bureaus, even banks with denial of service attacks. There's a lot more activity, and South Africa's sort of reported incidents on the rise year on year. It hasn't slowed, it's actually accelerating. And if you look at that, that's actually a problem that's ballooning, and VC's job, the venture capitalist's job, is actually to find companies that are tackling the problems of now and the future, not the problems of yesterday. So I think as these things sort of arise naturally, you will actually have a lot more security related opportunities, investable opportunities coming to the fore. I've been on a call with several companies this year that are starting afresh, coming out of fintech environments and payment spaces and insurtech environments, saying, hey, in being in these environments, we've actually spotted gaps, and so now they're building these startups and they capitalizing them at a rapid pace. So I think there's an organic push towards that anyway, but I think also events such as these would actually shed quite a bit of light on what's happening that side. I know if you look at South Africa as a nation in general, or Africa as a continent, we sort of tend to lag behind some of the initial trends from overseas, and then we sort of overtake them after a while. So with mobile phones and smartphone adoption and payments and those sorts of things. So if you look at cybersecurity, there's a wave of new cybersecurity startups being funded overseas, tackling real world problems. None of them are developing opportunities that's price sensitive or geared towards the African continent. And so, with all of these attacks, this increase in attacks that are happening on the continent, I think we're actually going to see a wave of cybersecurity investment opportunities coming to the fore.
Okay. And you said that you've been speaking to a few companies already about kind of investment, or maybe not investment opportunities, but what are you seeing? Are there any specific niches that they're kind of playing in that you can kind of talk to us about?
A lot of it is actually in the payment space, to be honest, because there's a lot of high volume transactions with new technologies, and those are creating opportunities for breaches. So there's a rate of pace that a lot of startups adopt to get traction, to get to the market, and they often overlook a few things just to accelerate the deployments. And security usually follows that, and we do have a security-related company in our portfolio. I mean, I won't mention the name at the moment. We didn't invest in it because it was security-related. This is the funny thing. We just like the fact that they were doing high-volume transaction processing.
Okay.
And the result of that was that these fintech scale-ups and banks were able to process a little bit more in real time and actually stem fraud leakage. Yeah, it's just quite interesting to note, people have come to us from a security angle, others have come to us, from a different angle, and the technology stack has been great, and they're solving a different problem, but in doing so also solving cybersecurity problems.
Okay. So we've, as I say, first year we've had venture capitalists at the summit. If we were to invite you back, maybe next year, 2 years' time, 3 years' time, what sort of, how would you have expected the cybersecurity ecosystem to have changed in terms of startups or companies? And do you think you will have invested in any of the kind of more pure security players that perhaps would appear be exhibiting here? That's a little plug to maybe get them to exhibit here once you have invested in them.
For sure, yeah. So for our side, we like deep tech, science and engineering, so there needs to be like a hardware component to it.
Okay.
So, if somebody's got a security device that enables end-to-end secure transmissions for CCTV, other forms of processing, collecting and processing data that has a secure, very, very secure layer, that would be of interest to us. We've actually got another company in the portfolio where they had VPN issues, and so their solution was, why don't we do end-to-end or device-to-device blockchain encryption? That's super interesting. Nobody's doing that.
Sure. Okay.
So I mean, what we'd see is like, what is cutting edge? What are people doing that nobody else is doing? How are they actually leveraging AI to speed up AI and automation to speed up, threat detection in a way that other people aren't doing it? I think that's what we look for.
Okay.
But I do think, just some of the early stage people that I've spoken to this year, just gives me a little bit of insight as to what's to come next year. So I think you'll probably have quite a bit more startups that are actually sort of around at various levels. So you have the people that will be starting next year. You'll have the people that are actually doing something interesting as a result of what they've done this year. And then you'll have new entrants that are actually active overseas but are seeing the strength of the opportunity in South Africa.
Okay. That's been awesome to hear. I'm really kind of fascinated. hope to hear more from your investment companies or the kind of portfolio companies. And I hope we see you again here next year. Ladies and gentlemen, that's been Thaheer Mullins, partner at Savant Venture Fund.